Why should someone collect?
Why would someone want to collect something?
Okay, so this is the album, and here are some of the beautiful stamps.
Yeah, this was like my first comic ever, like my first real big kid comic.
So this one's Twice. She's also part Twice. This is the girl I was talking about, Neon. Espa.
Somehow I think I started when I was a youngster. I used to collect stamps, and I had trains when I was a little boy.
Did you ever see a boy's eyes light up like a Christmas tree? You will if he gets Lionel trains for Christmas.
It might not seem obvious, but having a collection is a way of contemplating the world, a way of understanding its materiality, its multiplicity, its variety, its decay. But collecting provides this sort of laboratory of thinking about the world, and I think there's something to be gained from that.
My name is Brian Barbier, and I'm an associate curator of anthropology at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History. So I'm an anthropologist, but my specialty is archaeology. Collecting, I think, primarily affects history in that as societies become more complex, as different cultures develop, the material culture, the things that people use and keep around and maybe even cache for special purposes, becomes more and more important. In my line of work, I look at collecting two ways. So archaeologists do collect things, and even before archaeology was a developed discipline, there were folk collectors, people who went out and dug up the remains of the past, and maybe we could talk about the early Spanish explorers who were interested in finding gold in Peru or elsewhere. Today, of course, people I find in the United States and a lot of sort of industrialized countries often focus their collecting on hobby items. It might be collecting music, so collecting records, collecting stamps and coins, and the obvious things that we all think of when we think of modern collectors. But we have so many different niche collector spaces.
My name is Art Posey, and I'm a collector. Collecting means you're collecting something that already exists and has existed for years. So it's like you're going back and looking at history. Like, for example, these trains in here started in 1915, and they run up to about 1942. And even though I wasn't here in 1915 or 1925 or 1930 and so forth, you get to see what children used to play with in those days. I grew up in New York City, and I moved to California many years ago, and I moved in '51, and I moved to Santa Barbara in '63, and I started collecting trains probably 20, 25 years ago. I think a person collects one as a relaxation and also as a certain satisfaction of researching history and accumulating what's been in the past. And the reason to take your collection into a museum is to preserve it for the future. I think it is somewhat of an obsession, because again, if you have 1 or 2 and you found out it made 10 of them, gee, it gets to be your goal to buy the other 8.
Well, my interest in K-pop started when I was in 5th grade. I usually say 5th grade because that's when I remember. I just really loved girl groups. I loved just like the femininity of it. I've been collecting for 4 years now, and it's constantly growing because like I'm kind of addicted. But yeah, it's one of the major interests I'll have for like a long time, basically. My name is Malia. I'm a collector of K-pop, like K-pop merch, K-pop clothes, K-pop CDs, and K-pop photo cards. K-pop was something I kind of compressed in high school when I was younger because I thought it was kind of weird, kind of out there. But when I finally got out of high school, I was like, you know what? No one's gonna judge me anymore. So I started collecting, like just fill up my room with like knickknacks. There's little like bookmarks, stickers, posters. I love posters. That's when I found out about like the whole culture of K-pop, like CDs, photo cards, going to concerts, like having like a bias, which is like a favorite member of a group. And that's where it really started, was when Target started holding like K-pop albums. That's when I started buying them in 2020. And then I started, like, when I got a job, I started ordering them online. There's these light sticks that I have that are from K-pop concerts themselves. And like there's some like merchandise that's like K-pop concert exclusives. So that's where like my collection really started. You're putting so much like responsibility of like giving yourself something to like look forward for and like envelop yourself in. It shows a part of your personality as well. Honestly, I feel like people should collect more. And it kind of gives them an outlet too. Physical media is like kind of going out with like the digital phase, like CDs and like music downloads. If you collect physical media, that's like a part of history. That's going to turn into a part of history. Like K-pop history, like that's kind of like funny, but like that is history. Like someone's gonna look at my collection, like my future like daughters or whatever it is in the future, they're gonna look at my collection and be like, well, this is like my grandmother or my great-grandmother, like she collected this is really cool. And they'll look up people that are in my collection, like photos of them.
It's kind of like sharing a hobby with somebody, but you're able to show them the exact experience that you had, like verbatim. So I think it's a really cross-generational thing that shouldn't be excluded. Hi, my name is Giovanni Escalante. I am a collector. My older brother and I, we had like one little comic book that we had. It was like a Spider-Ham or something like that. It's where like Spider-Man is a pig and like this little cartoon, like little kid comic book universe. And me and him would read it all the time. It was special because my older brother and I would like play pretend, drawing like the scenes that we wanted to do when we were imagining like a fight between like 2 characters or something. When I found that old comic book again, when I was like 17, I was like, whoa, like, dude, like, where's this thing been? But then also like, I forgot like about this entire medium of art. So then I kind of went from there. When my parents moved out of Palmdale, we ended up being close to a comic book store. So my older brother and I were like 18 and 21. We went to the comic book store. We started like just being like, oh, these are all the things that we're reading online or pirating online on YouTube. Like, let's actually just buy it and read it here. A lot of the artists that like I read and like I pick up books from now have been working forever. It's really different because it's like bringing me back to like just viewing media and being in awe of how did these people do this? When I was like 4 years old, and me and my brother both like, oh my gosh, like look at how they drew this or look how they drew that. But it's very nostalgic.
Nostalgia means the pain of returning. Most people enjoy nostalgia or have a certain pleasure to it. But I think there's always that underside to it, which is that the past is something you can't recover. It's lost at that point. And so if you have some token of the past, it can bring a little bit of comfort. It can also remind you of that loss. My name is William Davies King. though I go by Dave, and I'm a lifelong collector in a somewhat unusual form. I'm a collector of nothing, which is plentiful. I've been collecting my entire life. I started collecting as a child, as most children do. I was accumulating things as a way of establishing a sense of security and a sense of ballast in life. Then that intensified in my teenage years. It attached to an effort to kind of create an identity for myself. And so I started collecting very odd things. I was inspired by Dadaism and some of the art trends that are essentially devoted to nothing. And I've now been doing that for over 40 years, so I have a mass of different categories of ephemeral collecting. Okay, so the joke I make is that this is my life as a collector. So these are the 100 and something different Life cereal boxes that I've been accumulating since the early 1980s. They've long featured kids on the front, starting with the original Mikey commercial.
I'm not gonna try it. Let's get Mikey. Yeah.
He likes it. He likes it.
Mikey.
That was the tagline on the commercial. So you can see in my house that my collections are all tucked away. They're in binders, they're in closets, they're in boxes, and they can't be seen readily. I didn't like it that everything was all kind of contained that way, and I don't have a house that's big enough to show everything. But then the idea of, well, maybe there are other spaces that could be available. Because museums really are the institutions of collecting that are about taking what is valuable and meaningful and organizing it and putting it into public form. So what is it in this paradoxical way to take things that aren't meaningful, especially, or aren't valuable, and also put it into public form?
If people didn't collect, that means you don't save anything. If people don't save anything, what's happened to history? You've collected these trains, and again, for future generations to enjoy and look at and see, wow, somebody nowadays will look at an iPad and it'll play a video game and say, toy train, what's that? Well, come down to the museum and see what their trains are about. It's something you can pick up, you can touch, you can feel, you can press a button, you can blow a whistle. You can't do that with an iPad.
The purpose of collecting, I would say, there's no one purpose of collecting, and different people collect for different motives. A collection is a world, that you have a collection and it is a little world that has its dimensions, its variety, its and so on. You know, as soon as you start to expand that way, there's no limit to where you can go.
It made me find friends, it made me find a community, it made me have a sense of belonging too.
I guess all of our collections are kind of representative of who we want to be.
Right now it's given me a real purpose. My purpose is to live long enough to, to finish the other side.
Collecting always comes down to the materiality of the world and what it is to be an owner.
So there's so many different ways you could go to define a collector. And I think most collectors recognize what another collector is, even if they don't share the same interests, but it's maybe hard to pin down in a single definition.
Why should someone collect?
Purpose,
Culture,
Childhood bond.
Gratifying.
history,
Nostalgia.
satisfaction,
community,
Creative expression.
time and effort.
joy.
Passion.
I'm a collector.
Bye.